The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty general store, and Olivia Fairmont stepped down onto the sun-baked earth of Wyatt, Montana territory, knowing that not a single soul in this frontier town cared whether she lived or died. It was 1882, and she had traveled 3 weeks from Philadelphia to reach this remote place, carrying nothing but a worn carpet bag and the fading hope that her late aunt's small inheritance might give her a fresh start. The letter from the lawyer had been brief. Her Aunt Martha had left her a small cabin on the outskirts of town and $50 in cash. It was not much, but it was more than Olivia had ever possessed in her 22 years of life. The main street of Wyatt stretched before her, a collection of weathered buildings that looked ready to collapse under the weight of the Montana sun. A saloon stood on one corner, its painted sign peeling. Across from it, a mercantile advertised supplies in hand-painted letters. Men in dusty clothes walked past her without a glance, and women pulling their children along the wooden sidewalks actively turned their faces away. Olivia was accustomed to being invisible. As an orphan raised in a Philadelphia workhouse, then employed as a seamstress in a factory where the foreman barely acknowledged her existence except to criticize her work, she had learned that expecting attention or kindness only led to disappointment. She had mousy brown hair that refused to hold a curl, gray eyes that seemed perpetually tired, and a thin frame that spoke of too many missed meals. Nothing about her commanded notice or respect. She picked up her carpet bag and walked toward the address the lawyer had provided. The cabin was supposedly 2 miles outside of town, along the creek road. As she trudged through the dust, the August heat pressed down on her like a physical weight. Her black mourning dress, appropriate for the city, felt suffocating here. Sweat trickled down her back, and her feet ached in her worn boots. The town gave way to open land dotted with sagebrush and the occasional cottonwood tree. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way that matched Olivia's mood perfectly. She had been walking for nearly an hour when she heard the thunder of hooves behind her. She stepped to the side of the dirt road, expecting the rider to pass without acknowledgement, but instead the horse slowed to a walk beside her. "You are heading in the wrong direction if you want to reach anywhere before nightfall," a male voice said. Olivia looked up, shading her eyes against the sun. The man on the horse was tall and broad-shouldered, sitting his saddle with the ease of someone who had spent more time on horseback than on foot. He wore a dusty brown hat, a work shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms, and had a red bandana tied loosely around his neck. His face was handsome in a weathered way, with a strong jaw covered in a few days' worth of beard, and eyes that were an unexpected shade of blue-green, like the Montana sky just before a storm. "I am looking for the Fairmont cabin," Olivia said, her voice hoarse from the dry air and lack of water. "Along the creek." The man studied her for a moment, his gaze taking in her city clothes and her obvious exhaustion. "That is still a good mile off. You look about ready to collapse from the heat." "I will manage," Olivia said stiffly. She had learned long ago not to accept help from strangers, especially men. Help always came with strings attached. "I am sure you will," the man said, but he did not ride away. Instead, he dismounted in one fluid motion and stood beside his horse, which was a magnificent chestnut gelding with intelligent eyes. "But there is no sense in being foolish about it. The Fairmont place is on my way. I can give you a ride." "I do not need charity," Olivia said, even as her vision swam slightly from the heat. "It is not charity," the man replied. "It is common sense. You are not used to this climate, Another hour in this sun and you will have heat stroke. Then I would have to load you onto my horse anyway, except you would be unconscious and much harder to manage. There was logic in his words, and Olivia was practical if nothing else. She nodded reluctantly. Thank you. The man helped her onto the horse, then swung up behind her. Olivia tensed at the sudden proximity, feeling his solid presence at her back. He smelled of leather and horses and something else, something clean like sage. I am Cade Zimmerman, he said as he guided the horse forward. I run the 3Z ranch which borders your aunt's old property. Olivia Fairmont, she replied. I did not realize I had neighbors. Out here, neighbors can mean someone living 5 miles away, Cade said. But the 3Z and your aunt's place share a fence line along the creek. Martha was a good woman. She kept to herself mostly, but she was always fair in her dealings. I was sorry to hear of her passing. I did not know her well, Olivia admitted. She left Philadelphia when I was just a child. I barely remember her. She never spoke much about family back east, Cade said. But she mentioned you a few times. Said she had a niece who worked too hard and deserved better. The words stirred something in Olivia's chest, an unexpected emotion. She had not realized her aunt had thought of her at all. They rode in silence for a while, the horse's steady gait eating up the distance. The landscape gradually changed as they followed the creek, with more trees appearing along the water's edge. Birds sang in the branches, and Olivia caught glimpses of silver water through the greenery. There, Cade said, pointing ahead. That is your place. The cabin was small but solidly built, constructed of logs with a stone chimney. It sat in a clearing near the creek, surrounded by a split-rail fence that enclosed about an acre of land. There was a small barn that looked like it had seen better days, and what might have been a vegetable garden, now overgrown with weeds. Cade helped Olivia down from the horse, and she was grateful for his steadying hand when her legs threatened to buckle. Being this close to him, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the result of years spent squinting into the sun. He looked to be in his late 20s, perhaps 28 or 29, with the weathered competence of a man who had worked hard all his life. Thank you for the ride, Olivia said, stepping away quickly. I appreciate your kindness. The cabin has been empty for 2 months, Cade said, not moving toward his horse. It will need airing out and the well should be checked before you drink from it. When was the last time you ate? I am fine, Olivia lied. In truth, she had finished the last of her bread that morning and her stomach was cramping with hunger. Cade gave her a look that suggested he did not believe her for a moment. Wait here, he said, and before she could protest, he was back on his horse and riding away at a quick trot. Olivia stood in the yard, uncertain what to do. She was alone for the first time since arriving in Montana, and the silence was overwhelming. Back in Philadelphia, there had always been noise. Factory machinery, street vendors, the constant press of humanity. Here, there was only the whisper of wind through the grass, the gurgle of the creek, and the distant cry of a hawk. She walked to the cabin door and found it unlocked. Inside, the air was stale but not unpleasant. The main room was simple, with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table with 2 chairs, and a rocking chair near the window. A doorway led to what appeared to be a small bedroom. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, but it was clean otherwise and surprisingly well appointed for a frontier cabin. Olivia set down her carpetbag and opened the windows, letting in fresh air. She was exploring the small pantry, which still contained a few jars of preserved vegetables, when she heard hoofbeats again. Cade had returned, and he was not alone. He carried a burlap sack and a canteen, and he was leading a packhorse laden with supplies. You did not have to do this, Olivia said as he began unloading items onto the porch. A sack of flour, coffee, beans, bacon, eggs carefully packed in a crate of straw, and even a loaf of fresh bread. My foreman's wife, Maria, sent the bread, Cade said. She heard a woman had come to claim Martha's place and insisted I bring supplies. Maria does not take no for an answer, so you might as well accept gracefully. He carried everything inside, moving around the small space with easy familiarity. He checked the fireplace, cleared out some old ash, and even primed the pump at the sink until clear water flowed. "The well is good," he said. "That is one less thing to worry about. Do you know how to light a fire, or should I show you? I can manage a fire," Olivia said. She had learned to do many things in the workhouse, even if she had never had to start a fire in a frontier cabin before. Cade nodded. He seemed about to leave, then paused at the door. "The 3Z Ranch House is about 3 miles northwest of here. If you need anything, or if there is any trouble, you come find me. Understood?" "Why are you being so kind to me?" Olivia asked suddenly. The question came out more sharply than she intended, but she was tired and confused and unused to generosity without strings attached. Cade looked at her steadily. "Because you look like someone who has not had much kindness in her life, and that seems like a situation worth correcting." He settled his hat more firmly on his head. "Besides, out here, neighbors look after each other. It is how we survive." After he left, Olivia stood in the doorway of her cabin, watching him ride away. Her throat felt tight, and she blinked back unexpected tears. She would not cry. She had not cried when her parents died of fever when she was 6, leaving her alone. She had not cried through the hard years in the workhouse, or the endless days at the sewing machine in the factory. She would not cry now, just because a stranger had shown her a small measure of kindness. But the tears came anyway, silent and hot, and she let them fall as the sun began to set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The next morning, Olivia woke to brilliant sunlight streaming through the cabin windows and the sound of someone hammering. She dressed quickly in one of her 2 work dresses, pinned up her hair, and stepped outside to find Cade on the roof of her barn, repairing a large hole. "Good morning," he called down when he saw her. "I hope I did not wake you. What are you doing?" Olivia asked, shading her eyes to look up at him. "Fixing your barn," Cade said, as if this were the most obvious thing in the world. "The roof was about to cave in. It will not take long." Olivia felt a familiar surge of suspicion. "I cannot pay you for this work." Cade hammered in another nail before responding. "Did I ask for payment?" "No, but then do not worry about it." He climbed down the ladder with the ease of long practice. "I had spare lumber from a project at the ranch, and the barn needed fixing. It is as simple as that." Nothing was ever that simple in Olivia's experience, but she did not know how to argue with him. He seemed impervious to her protests, working with steady efficiency while she watched, bewildered. "Have you eaten?" Cade asked when he finished securing the last board. "I had some of the bread," Olivia said. "That was hours ago. Come on." He started toward the cabin as if it were his own home. "I will make breakfast." "You do not need to. I know I do not need to," Cade said, "but I am going to anyway." "Do you argue with everyone who tries to help you, or am I special?" Despite herself, Olivia felt the corner of her mouth twitch. "Everyone." "That must be exhausting," Cade said, "for you and for them." He proved surprisingly competent in the small kitchen, frying bacon and eggs while Olivia made coffee. They ate at the wooden table, and Olivia could not remember the last time a meal had tasted so good. "What are your plans?" Cade asked. "Are you staying in Montana, or will you sell the place and go back east?" "I am staying," Olivia said firmly. "There is nothing for me in Philadelphia. At least here I have a chance to make something of my own." Cade nodded. "It is hard country, Beautiful but hard. The winters are brutal and you are far from town. Have you ever lived on your own before? I have lived on my own since I was 6 years old, Olivia said quietly. I have just always been surrounded by people while doing it. Something shifted in Cade's expression, a softening around his eyes. Fair enough, but you will need to learn quickly. How to preserve food for winter, how to handle a gun in case of predators, how to manage a horse. I do not have a horse, Olivia interrupted. You will, Cade said. You cannot live out here without one. I have a mare at the ranch, a good gentle horse named Blossom. She is yours if you want her. I cannot accept, you can and you will, Cade said, his voice firm but not unkind. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better, but you need a horse, Olivia. It is not negotiable. Olivia set down her fork, frustration bubbling up inside her. Why are you doing all of this? You do not know me. I am nobody to you. Cade was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. When he spoke, his voice was serious. You are not nobody. And out here on the frontier, we do not measure a person's worth by what they have or where they came from. We measure it by their character. You traveled 3 weeks alone to start a new life in a place you have never been. That takes courage. It takes strength. Those qualities matter more than money or connections or fancy education. He stood and carried his plate to the sink. Besides, he added, his tone lighter, I need you. Olivia blinked. I beg your pardon, Cade turned to face her, leaning against the counter. My ranch, the 3Z, it is a good operation. We run about 2,000 head of cattle, have 12 men working full-time, and we do well enough. But there is a problem. The previous owner of this land, before your aunt bought it, had water rights to the creek that runs through both properties. When your aunt purchased the place, she maintained a verbal agreement with my father about sharing the water. Now that she has passed, I need to formalize that agreement with you. Oh, Olivia said. The world suddenly made more sense. Cade was not being kind out of the goodness of his heart. He needed something from her. The disappointment was sharp and familiar. I see. I do not think you do, Cade said. I am not explaining this well. Yes, I need to discuss the water rights with you eventually, but that is not why I am helping you. I would have done the same for anyone who showed up here alone and unprepared. What I am trying to say badly is that you matter. Your presence here matters. You are not invisible anymore, Olivia. Out here, every person counts. He pulled on his hat and moved toward the door. I will be back tomorrow with Blossom and we will start teaching you to ride. In the meantime, there is a rifle over the fireplace. It is loaded. Do not hesitate to use it if you need to. After he left, Olivia sat at the table for a long time, trying to process everything he had said. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that she could matter to someone, that her life could be different here. But years of disappointment had taught her to be cautious with hope. Still, she found herself watching the road the next day, waiting for Cade to return. True to his word, Cade arrived the following morning with a pretty bay mare and the patience of a saint. Over the next week, he visited every day, teaching Olivia how to mount and dismount, how to hold the reins, how to communicate with the horse through gentle pressure and voice commands. Blossom was indeed perfect for a beginner, responsive but forgiving of mistakes. You are a natural, Cade said one afternoon as Olivia successfully guided Blossom through a series of turns. Another week and you will be ready to ride into town on your own. Olivia felt a flush of pride at his words. She had never been good at anything physical, had always been the clumsy one, the one picked last for any activity. But riding felt different. There was something freeing about being on horseback, about moving across the land with speed and purpose. Thank you for teaching me, she said as they walked the horses back to her cabin. I know you have your own work to do. I am making time, Cade said. My foreman, Jack, is more than capable of handling the daily operations. Besides, I want to make sure you are settled before the summer is over. Once fall arrives, we will be busy with the roundup, and then winter comes fast in Montana. Tell me about the ranch, Olivia said. She was curious about Cade's life, about what had brought him to this remote corner of Montana territory. My father started the 3Z 30 years ago, Cade said. He came out here with nothing but determination and a vision. Built the ranch from scratch, survived droughts and harsh winters and everything else this land could throw at him. He passed 5 years ago, left the place to me and my brother. You have a brother? Had, Cade said, his voice going flat. Connor died 3 years ago, thrown from a horse during the roundup, broke his neck. I am so sorry, Olivia said softly. Cade nodded. He was 2 years younger than me. We were close. After he died, I almost sold the place. It did not seem to mean much, working the land without him. But Jack, my foreman, he talked me through it. Reminded me that the ranch was not just mine and Connor's dream, it was our father's legacy. So I stayed, and I am glad I did. The land heals you if you let it. They rode in silence for a while, and Olivia thought about healing, about whether it was truly possible to start over, to become someone new. What about you? Cade asked. What was your life like in Philadelphia? Olivia hesitated. She did not like talking about her past, about the years of grinding poverty and loneliness. But Cade had shared his grief with her, and it seemed only fair to offer something in return. I was orphaned young, she said. My parents died of fever, and I had no other family willing to take me in. I was sent to a workhouse, one of those institutions for children with nowhere else to go. It was not cruel exactly, but it was not kind either. Everything was about efficiency and discipline. We were taught to read and write and do basic arithmetic, but mostly we learned to work. When I was 14, I was apprenticed to a seamstress. When I turned 18, I started working in a garment factory. That sounds like a hard life, Cade said. It was the only life I knew, Olivia replied. I thought that was all there was. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. I had no friends, no real connections to anyone. I was just one of hundreds of girls doing the same work, living the same gray existence. Then I received the letter about my aunt, and suddenly there was a possibility of something different, so I took it. I am glad you did, Cade said, and the sincerity in his voice made Olivia's heart skip. As the days passed, Cade continued to visit regularly, always with some reason. To check the fence line, to bring fresh meat from a successful hunt, to help Olivia start clearing the overgrown garden. But Olivia began to suspect that the reasons were excuses, that Cade was coming to see her because he wanted to, not because he needed to. The realization was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. One evening, Cade stayed later than usual, helping Olivia plant the last of the vegetable seeds they had purchased in town. They worked in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. When they finished, Cade washed his hands at the pump and accepted Olivia's offer of coffee. They sat on the porch steps, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The air was cooler now that the sun had set, carrying the scent of sage and pine. I have been thinking about the water rights, Cade said suddenly. I want you to know that whatever we agree on, it will be fair. I am not trying to take advantage of you. I know, Olivia said, and she did know. Over the past few weeks, Cade had proven himself to be honest and honorable. What kind of arrangement did you have with my aunt? She allowed my cattle to water at the creek in exchange for my help with heavy work around her property. Fence repairs, that sort of thing. She also had access to my well if hers ever ran dry, and I kept an eye on her place when she went to town. It was a good arrangement, beneficial to both of us. That sounds reasonable, Olivia said. "I would be happy to continue the same agreement. Are you sure?" "You should think about it, maybe talk to a lawyer in town." "Cade," Olivia interrupted. "I trust you. I may not have trusted you when we first met, but I do now. If you say the arrangement is fair, then I believe you." Cade turned to look at her, and in the fading light his eyes were intense. "Why? Because you have been nothing but kind to me since the moment we met, because you have asked for nothing in return, because when you look at me, you see me, not just someone to be used or ignored." Olivia felt her cheeks heat, but she continued. "I spent my whole life being invisible, Cade. You made me feel like I mattered. That is worth more than any legal agreement." Cade reached out and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "You do matter, Olivia, more than you know." They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped, neither of them speaking. Olivia's heart was racing, and she could feel the pulse point in her wrist throbbing where Cade's thumb rested gently against it. Finally, Cade stood, though he seemed reluctant to break the contact. "I should head back. It is getting late." "Yes," Olivia agreed, though she wanted him to stay. "I will be by in a few days," Cade said. "I am taking some men up to the north pasture to check on the herd, and we will be gone for a couple of nights. But if you need anything, you can ride over to the ranch house. Maria will be there and Jack." "I will be fine," Olivia assured him. Cade mounted his horse but paused before riding away. "Olivia, be careful. There have been reports of rustlers in the area, men stealing cattle and causing trouble. Keep that rifle close and do not open your door at night unless you know who is there." "I will be careful," Olivia promised. She watched him ride away, his figure gradually disappearing into the gathering darkness. Then she went inside, barred the door, and lay in bed, thinking about the feel of his hand in hers and wondering when exactly she had started to fall in love with Cade Zimmerman. The next 2 days passed slowly. Olivia kept herself busy with chores, washing clothes in the creek, working in the garden, cleaning the cabin from top to bottom. But she found herself listening for hoofbeats, hoping Cade might return early. On the second night, she woke to the sound of horses outside her cabin. Multiple horses, moving slowly. She lay frozen in her bed, heart pounding, remembering Cade's warning about rustlers. Men's voices drifted through the window, speaking in low tones. Olivia crept out of bed and retrieved the rifle from above the fireplace. She had never shot a gun at a person before, was not even sure she could, but the weight of it in her hands was reassuring. "No smoke from the chimney," one voice said. "Place looks empty." "Old Martha is dead," another voice replied. "Heard it in town. No one is living here now. Good. We can water the horses and rest up before moving the cattle north." Olivia's breath caught. These were rustlers, just as Cade had warned. They were planning to steal cattle, possibly from the 3Z. She had to get to Cade, had to warn him. But the men were right outside. If she tried to leave, they would see her. She waited, barely breathing, as the men watered their horses at her creek and made camp in the clearing near her barn. There were 5 of them, rough-looking men with hard faces and guns on their hips. Through the window she could see their fire, could hear their laughter as they passed a bottle between them. Hours passed. Olivia stayed awake, gripping the rifle, watching. Finally, as dawn began to break, the men stirred. They saddled their horses and rode north in the direction of the 3Z ranch. As soon as they were out of sight, Olivia moved. She dressed quickly, grabbed the rifle, and ran to the barn. Blossom whinnied softly as Olivia saddled her with shaking hands. She had only been riding for a couple of weeks, had never ridden faster than a trot, but she had no choice now. She mounted and urged Blossom into a gallop, holding on for dear life as the mare responded. The 3 miles to the 3Z ranch house had never seemed so far. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the prairie. Olivia's arms ached from gripping the reins, and her legs burned from holding on, but she did not slow down. The 3Z ranch house finally appeared ahead, a large, sprawling building with a barn and several outbuildings. Olivia slowed Blossom to a trot as they approached, not wanting to spook any animals or people. A Mexican woman with graying hair came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. This had to be Maria, the foreman's wife. "Help," Olivia called out. "I need help. There are rustlers. They are planning to steal cattle." Maria's eyes widened. She called out in rapid Spanish, and a man emerged from the barn, a rifle in his hands. He was older, perhaps in his 50s, with a weathered face and sharp eyes. "I am Jack," he said. "What did you see?" Olivia quickly explained about the men camping by her cabin, about their conversation regarding moving cattle north. Jack's expression grew grim. "That would be our north herd. Cade is up there now with 3 men. If the rustlers catch them by surprise—" He did not finish the sentence. "We have to warn him," Olivia said. "We will," Jack said. "I will take 2 men and ride hard. We should reach them before the rustlers do." "I am coming with you," Olivia said. Jack looked at her as if she had grown a second head. "Madam, with respect, you look like you have barely been on a horse before. This is going to be hard riding over rough country." "I am coming," Olivia repeated. "Those men camped on my property. This is partly my responsibility. And besides, Cade is in danger. I am not staying behind." Something in her voice must have convinced Jack, because he nodded slowly. "All right, but you do exactly as I say, understand? If I tell you to hang back or take cover, you do it. No arguments." "Agreed," Olivia said. Jack whistled sharply, and 2 ranch hands came running. Within minutes, they were mounted and riding north, pushing their horses hard. Olivia clung to Blossom, trusting the mare to follow the other horses. Her muscles screamed in protest, and she knew she would be covered in bruises by tomorrow, but she did not care. All that mattered was reaching Cade in time. They rode for over an hour, climbing into the foothills where the north pasture sprawled across a wide valley. In the distance, Olivia could see cattle grazing, and beyond them, a group of riders moving purposefully toward a small camp where smoke rose from a morning fire. "There," Jack said, pointing. "That is Cade's camp, and those riders coming from the west, those are the rustlers." "We are not going to make it in time," one of the ranch hands said. "We have to try," Jack said grimly. He pulled out his rifle and fired a shot into the air, hoping the sound would carry and warn Cade. The distant figures at the camp stirred. Olivia saw a tall man stand and look in their direction. Cade. He had heard the shot, but the rustlers had heard it too, and they were spurring their horses forward now, drawing their weapons. What happened next unfolded with terrible clarity. The rustlers reached Cade's camp while Jack and his men were still too far away. There was shouting, and then gunshots rang out. Cade and his men took cover behind their wagon, returning fire. "Come on," Jack yelled, and they galloped forward. Olivia had never been so frightened in her life. The sound of gunfire echoed off the hills, and she could see puffs of smoke from the weapons. One of the rustlers fell from his horse. Cade's men were holding their own, but they were outnumbered. Jack and the ranch hands added their fire to the fight, and the rustlers suddenly found themselves caught between 2 groups. It was over quickly after that. 2 of the rustlers were wounded, 1 was dead, and the remaining 2 threw down their weapons and surrendered. Olivia slid from Blossom's back on legs that felt like jelly. She stumbled toward Cade, who was walking toward her with long strides. There was a cut on his cheek, bleeding sluggishly, but he was alive. "Olivia," he said, his voice rough. "What are you doing here? You could have been killed." "I had to warn you," Olivia said. "They were at my cabin last night. I heard them talking about stealing your cattle. I could not just— She did not get to finish the sentence because Cade pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She could feel his heart pounding against her chest, feel the tremor in his muscles. "You rode up here alone," he said into her hair. "You could have been hurt. God, Olivia, when I saw you coming up behind Jack, He broke off, pulling back to look at her face. "You are the most reckless, brave, foolish woman I have ever met." "I had to," Olivia repeated. "You were in danger. And so were you." Cade cupped her face in his hands. "Do you have any idea how important you are? Do you understand that if something had happened to you— He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. Then he leaned down and kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate and fierce, full of fear and relief and something deeper, something that had been building between them for weeks. Olivia's hands came up to grip his shirt, and she kissed him back with everything in her, pouring all her feelings into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cade rested his forehead against hers. "You are the most important person on this ranch now," he said quietly. "The most important person in my life. I need you to understand that." Tears stung Olivia's eyes. "I was nobody," she whispered. "How can I be important to anyone?" "You were never nobody," Cade said fiercely. "Maybe other people were too blind or too stupid to see your worth, but I see it. I have seen it from the moment you stepped down from that stagecoach, tired and alone but still determined to make a new life. You are strong and brave and kind, and I am falling in love with you. Actually, I think I already fell. It just took almost losing you to make me admit it." "I love you too," Olivia said, the words coming easily now. "I think I started loving you when you brought me food that first day, or maybe when you fixed my barn, or when you taught me to ride. I'm not sure when it happened, but it did." Cade kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a release of tension. Around them, the ranch hands were securing the rustlers and checking on the cattle, but Olivia was aware of nothing but Cade, the feel of his lips on hers, the solid warmth of his body. Finally, Jack cleared his throat. "Boss, we need to figure out what to do with these men." Cade pulled back reluctantly. "Right, we will take them to Wyatt, let the sheriff deal with them." He looked down at Olivia. "You are riding back with me. And we are going to have a long talk about you putting yourself in danger." "I would do it again," Olivia said. "To protect you, I would do it again in a heartbeat." The look Cade gave her was full of such love and exasperation that she almost laughed. "We are going to need to work on your sense of self-preservation," he said. They made the ride back to the ranch headquarters together, Cade insisting that Olivia stay close to him. The wounded rustlers were tied onto horses, and the dead man was wrapped in a blanket and secured over his saddle. It was grim business, but necessary. At the ranch house, Maria fussed over both of them, cleaning the cut on Cade's face and making Olivia sit down with a cup of coffee. "You rode all that way," she said in accented English. "You are braver than you know, girl." "Or crazier," Jack said, but his eyes were kind. "Either way, you saved lives today. Cade and his men would have been in real trouble if we had not arrived when we did." That evening, after the rustlers had been delivered to the sheriff in Wyatt and statements had been given, Cade brought Olivia back to her cabin. He helped her down from Blossom, and she winced as her abused muscles protested. "You are going to be sore tomorrow," Cade said sympathetically. "I should have insisted you stay behind." "You could not have stopped me," Olivia said. "No," Cade agreed. "I do not think anyone could stop you once you have made up your mind about something. It is one of the things I love about you." They walked to the cabin together, and Olivia invited him inside. It felt different now, having him in her space when there was this new understanding between them. The air seemed charged with possibility. "I meant what I said earlier," Cade said as they sat at the table. About you being the most important person in my life. I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but out here, things move faster. Life is harder and you learn quickly what matters and what does not. And you matter, Olivia, more than I can put into words. You matter to me too, Olivia said. I never thought I would have this. I never thought anyone would see me, really see me the way you do. I see you, Cade said. He reached across the table and took her hand. I see a woman who has survived things that would have broken most people. I see someone who is brave enough to start over in a place where she knows no one. I see someone who would ride into danger to save others. I see the woman I want to spend my life with. Olivia's breath caught. Cade, I am not asking you to marry me, Cade said quickly. Not yet. We need more time, need to be sure. But I am telling you my intentions. I am telling you that I want a future with you if you want the same thing. I do, Olivia said. I want that more than anything. Cade stood and pulled her up from her chair, drawing her into his arms. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, and Olivia felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She was home, not just in this cabin or in Montana, but in Cade's arms. She was finally home. Over the next few months, as summer faded into autumn, Olivia and Cade spent as much time together as their work allowed. Cade continued to teach her about ranch life, showing her how to identify different plants and animals, how to read the weather, how to handle the various challenges that arose on a Montana frontier ranch. Olivia proved to be an apt student, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. She also got to know the people who made up Cade's extended family at the 3Z Ranch. Jack, the foreman, was gruff but kind, a man who had worked for Cade's father and had helped raise both Cade and his late brother Connor. Maria, Jack's wife, took Olivia under her wing, teaching her how to preserve food for the long Montana winter and sharing recipes that had been passed down through her family for generations. There were the ranch hands, too. Young Tommy, barely 19, who was learning the cattle business from the ground up. Old Sam, who had been a cowboy for 40 years and had stories that could make you laugh or cry. Pete and Dave, brothers from Texas who had come north looking for work and decided to stay. Olivia had gone from having no family to being part of a large, boisterous group of people who cared about each other. It was overwhelming at times, but wonderful too. In early October, Cade took Olivia to see the roundup, where the cattle were gathered from the open range and sorted for market. It was hard, dusty work, with men on horseback working from dawn until well after dark. Olivia watched in fascination as Cade and his men cut individual animals from the herd with practiced precision, their horses responding to the slightest touch. That evening, as they sat around a campfire under a sky full of stars, Cade told her stories about his father and brother, about the early days of the ranch when they had barely survived the first winter. Olivia, in turn, told him more about her life in Philadelphia, about the friends she had made at the factory who were the closest thing to family she had known. "You ever miss it?" Cade asked. "The city, I mean. All the people and the activity." "No," Olivia said honestly. "I thought the noise and crowds were normal, but they were just distractions. Here, everything feels more real. The work is harder, but it is more meaningful, and I have you. I have never had anything worth missing before." Cade pulled her closer, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crackling fire and the distant lowing of cattle. By November, the first snow had fallen, dusting the mountains and valley with white. Olivia stood on her porch one morning, watching the flakes drift down, and marveled at how much her life had changed in just a few months. She was no longer the frightened, invisible woman who had stepped off that stagecoach. She was stronger now, more confident. She had a home, people who cared about her, and a man who loved her. Cade arrived mid-morning, riding through the snow with a determined expression. "I have a question to ask you," he said as he dismounted, "and I am not waiting any longer." He walked up the porch steps and took Olivia's hands in his. "I know I said we would wait, that we would take our time, but I am done waiting. Life is too short, Olivia. My brother died at 25 and my father never got to see 60. I do not want to waste a single day when I could be spending it as your husband." He dropped to one knee right there on the porch, still holding her hands. "Olivia Fairmont, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, the person I wake up to every morning for the rest of my life?" Tears streamed down Olivia's face, but she was smiling. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course I will marry you." Cade stood and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple gold band with a small diamond. "It was my mother's," he said. "She died when I was young, but my father saved it. I want you to have it." Olivia's hands shook as Cade slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, and she stared at it through her tears, unable to believe this was real. "When?" she asked. "When do you want to get married?" "As soon as possible," Cade said. "Tomorrow, if we can manage it. But I suppose we should be practical. Christmas? That gives us time to plan something nice, and it is only a month away." "Christmas," Olivia agreed. "That sounds perfect." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Maria insisted on helping with the wedding preparations, and soon it seemed like everyone in Wyatt was involved. The local reverend agreed to perform the ceremony at the church in town. The women of Wyatt, who had initially ignored Olivia, now welcomed her warmly, hearing how she had helped stop the rustlers and saved the lives of Cade and his men. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the general store, donated fabric for a wedding dress, which several of the town's seamstresses worked on together. When Olivia tried it on for the first time, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress was simple but elegant, made of cream-colored silk with lace at the collar and cuffs. It fit her perfectly, highlighting her slender figure and making her gray eyes look luminous. "You look beautiful," Maria said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Cade is going to fall over when he sees you." The wedding was set for Christmas Day, 1882. The church was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons, and candles flickered on every surface, filling the space with warm light. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, along with all the hands from the 3Z Ranch. Olivia stood at the back of the church, her heart pounding. She had no father to walk her down the aisle, no family at all. But Jack appeared at her elbow, dressed in his Sunday best, his weathered face creased in a gentle smile. "If you do not mind," he said gruffly, "I would be honored to give you away. You have become like a daughter to Maria and me these past months. It would mean a lot." Olivia hugged him, too moved to speak. Then the organ began to play and she took Jack's arm. Cade stood at the front of the church, looking impossibly handsome in a new black suit. His eyes found Olivia's as she began walking down the aisle, and the love in his expression took her breath away. She had never felt more seen, more valued, more cherished than she did in that moment. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. They exchanged vows in steady voices, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When the reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Cade kissed her with such tenderness that Olivia felt her heart might burst with happiness. The reception was held at the 3Z Ranch house, with food and music and dancing. Olivia danced with Cade, with Jack, with young Tommy, who blushed furiously the entire time. She laughed and talked and accepted congratulations from what felt like hundreds of people, all of whom treated her with warmth and respect. As the evening wore on, Cade pulled her away from the crowd. They slipped out onto the porch, where the night air was cold and clear. The stars overhead were brilliant, and in the distance, they could see the mountains silhouetted against the sky. "Happy?" Cade asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "More than I ever dreamed possible," Olivia said. She leaned back against his chest, feeling completely safe and loved. "A year ago, I was working in that factory, thinking my life would never change. And now I am here, married to you. It feels like a dream." "It is real," Cade said. He turned her in his arms so they were face to face. "You are real, our love is real, and this life we are building together is real. And it is only going to get better." They spent their wedding night in the ranch house, in the room that had been Cade's since he was a boy and was now theirs to share. It was both thrilling and terrifying for Olivia, who had no experience with physical intimacy. But Cade was patient and gentle, taking his time, making sure she felt safe and cherished. By the time the sun rose on their first day as husband and wife, Olivia felt like she had been reborn. They decided that Olivia would keep her cabin for the time being, using it for storage and as a place to retreat when they needed privacy. But she moved into the ranch house with Cade, settling into her new role as the ranch owner's wife. It was not always easy. There was so much to learn, and Olivia sometimes felt overwhelmed by the responsibilities that came with her new position. She was expected to help manage the household, to oversee the cooking and cleaning, to keep the accounts for the ranch. But Maria was patient, teaching her everything she needed to know, and Olivia discovered that she had a head for numbers and a talent for organization. She also discovered that she loved ranching. She loved the rhythm of the seasons, the hard work, the satisfaction of seeing things grow and thrive under her care. In the spring, she planted a large garden and worked with Maria to preserve the harvest for winter. She learned to help with the chickens and the pigs, to make butter and cheese, to do the 1,000 small tasks that kept a ranch running smoothly. But more than anything, she loved being Cade's wife. They fell into an easy partnership, working side by side during the day and falling into each other's arms at night. Cade was everything Olivia had never dared to hope for, kind and strong, thoughtful and passionate. He made her laugh with his dry humor and feel cherished with his constant small gestures of affection. In June of 1883, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Cade one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, and his whoop of joy could probably be heard all the way to Wyatt. He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down carefully as if she were made of glass. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked anxiously. "Do you need to sit down? Should I get Maria?" Olivia laughed. "I am fine, Cade. Pregnant women are not invalids. But yes, we should tell Maria. She will want to help." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Olivia was tired and nauseous for the first few months. Maria and the other ranch women fussed over her, making sure she rested enough and ate properly. Cade was almost comically overprotective, barely letting her lift a finger. "I am not made of porcelain," Olivia told him one day as he insisted on carrying a basket of laundry that she was perfectly capable of managing herself. "I know," Cade said. "But you are carrying our child, and that makes you precious beyond measure. Humor me." Their son was born in February of 1884, during a blizzard that trapped everyone inside for 3 days. Maria acted as midwife, with Cade pacing the hallway outside their room and wearing a path in the floorboards. When he was finally allowed in to meet his son, his face went soft with wonder. "He is perfect," Cade whispered, staring down at the tiny red-faced infant in Olivia's arms. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Connor after Cade's late brother. Little Connor had his father's blue-green eyes and a surprising amount of dark hair. He was a good baby, quick to smile and relatively peaceful, and Olivia fell in love with him completely. Motherhood transformed Olivia in ways she had not anticipated. She had never felt particularly maternal before, but holding her son, feeling his weight in her arms and his complete trust in her ability to care for him, awakened something fierce and protective inside her. She would do anything for this child, fight anyone who threatened him. The intensity of her love was almost frightening. Cade was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with Connor. He would sit in the rocking chair by the window, holding his son and singing to him in a low, rumbling voice. He changed diapers and walked the floor at night when the baby was fussy, insisting that Olivia needed her rest. "I never knew I could love someone so much," Cade said one night as they watched Connor sleep in his cradle. "I thought what I felt for you was the strongest love possible, but this is different. It is the same intensity but in a different way." "I know," Olivia said, squeezing his hand. "I feel it too. We made this perfect little person together. It is miraculous." As Connor grew from an infant into a toddler, life on the ranch fell into a comfortable rhythm. The 3Z continued to prosper under Cade's management, and Olivia took on more responsibilities, becoming his full partner in running the operation. She discovered she had a talent for the business side of ranching, for negotiating with buyers and managing the accounts. In 1886, their daughter was born, a tiny, delicate thing they named Catherine after Cade's mother. Catherine had her mother's gray eyes and gentle disposition, and from the very beginning, she and Connor were inseparable. Watching her two children play together, Olivia felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. The years passed quickly. Connor grew into a sturdy, adventurous boy who wanted nothing more than to be like his father, riding out with the ranch hands as soon as he was old enough. Catherine was quieter, preferring to stay close to home, helping her mother in the garden and learning to cook with Maria. In 1889, Olivia gave birth to twins, two boys they named William and Robert. The ranch house was suddenly full of noise and laughter and the controlled chaos of 4 children under the age of 6. It was exhausting and wonderful and sometimes overwhelming, but Olivia treasured every moment. She would sometimes think back to that lonely, invisible girl who had arrived in Wyatt 7 years earlier, expecting to be ignored, expecting nothing. That girl could never have imagined this life. A husband who adored her, children who filled her days with joy, a place in a community where she was valued and respected. "You are smiling," Cade said one evening as they sat on the porch after the children were asleep. "What are you thinking about?" "About how far I have come," Olivia said. "About how different my life is now compared to what it was. About how lucky I am." "I am the lucky one," Cade said. He pulled her close and she rested her head on his shoulder. "You saved me, Olivia. After Connor died, after my father passed, I was just going through the motions. The ranch was work, nothing more. Then you arrived and suddenly everything had meaning again. You gave me a reason to build something lasting, to care about the future." "We saved each other," Olivia said. "I was barely existing before. Now I am living, truly living." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of the ranch at night. The cattle in the near pasture, the horses in the barn, the creek running along the property line. These sounds had become as familiar to Olivia as her own heartbeat. As the years continued to pass, the children grew and the ranch prospered. Connor, at 18, was already working full-time on the ranch, learning everything he could from his father. He had Cade's love for the land and Olivia's head for business, a combination that promised well for the future of the 3Z. Catherine, at 16, had blossomed into a beautiful young woman with a talent for horse training. The ranch had expanded into breeding horses as well as running cattle, and Catherine had a natural gift for working with the animals. The twins, William and Robert, now 14, were still finding their way. William wanted to be a veterinarian, fascinated by animal medicine. Robert talked about becoming a lawyer, about helping ensure that ranchers and farmers were treated fairly under the law. "We raised good children," Cade said one evening as they prepared for bed. He was 50 now, with silver threading through his dark hair, but he was still the same strong, capable man Olivia had fallen in love with. "They are all so different, but they are all good people." "We did," Olivia agreed. At 42, she had a few strands of gray in her own hair and fine lines around her eyes, but she felt more beautiful than she ever had in her youth. Age and experience and love had given her a confidence she had lacked before. She still helped run the ranch, still kept the accounts and negotiated deals and worked alongside the ranch hands when extra help was needed. She had earned their respect over the years, proving herself capable and fair. The 3Z was as much her ranch as it was Cade's, a partnership in every sense of the word. In the spring of 1900, Connor announced his engagement to a young woman from town, the daughter of the mercantile owner. Olivia liked Sarah immediately, recognizing in her the same quiet strength that she herself had possessed at that age. The wedding was planned for June, and the whole ranch buzzed with preparations. "Another generation," Cade said as they watched Connor and Sarah walk hand in hand through the garden. "Soon there will be grandchildren running around." "I am too young to be a grandmother," Olivia protested, but she was smiling. The truth was, she was looking forward to it. Looking forward to watching her children build their own lives and families, to seeing the ranch continue into the future. The wedding was beautiful, held at the ranch under a perfect blue Montana sky. Olivia stood beside Cade, watching their son marry his love, and thought about her own wedding nearly 20 years earlier. So much had happened since then, so much love and joy and hard work. "What are you thinking?" Cade whispered, slipping his arm around her waist. "About us," Olivia said. "About that Christmas when we got married, about how young we were and how brave to take that leap of faith." "Best decision I ever made," Cade said. "Marrying you, building this life with you, I would not change a single thing." "Neither would I," Olivia said. True to their hopes, Sarah was pregnant by autumn. The news brought celebration to the ranch, and Olivia threw herself into preparations for her first grandchild. Catherine helped her sew tiny clothes, and the twins built a beautiful cradle from oak, wood they had carefully selected and seasoned. The baby, a boy they named Jackson, was born in May of 1901. When Connor placed the infant in Olivia's arms for the first time, she was transported back to the moment when Connor himself had been born, to that overwhelming rush of love and wonder. But this was different, sweeter somehow. She could hold this baby and then hand him back, could spoil him without the full weight of responsibility. "He looks like you," she told Connor. "He has your chin, and I think his eyes might be that same blue-green." Connor beamed with pride, and Cade stood beside them, one hand on his son's shoulder, looking at his grandson with such love that Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. Over the next few years, more grandchildren arrived. Connor and Sarah had 2 more children, a girl and another boy. Catherine married a ranch hand named Thomas, and they had twins, continuing that particular family tradition. Even the younger boys settled down, William marrying a teacher from town and Robert bringing home a sharp-witted woman he had met while studying law in Helena. The ranch house expanded to accommodate the growing family, with new wings added for the married children and their families. Sunday dinners became loud, chaotic affairs with children running everywhere, and conversations happening at multiple volumes. It was noisy and messy and absolutely perfect. In 1910, Cade and Olivia celebrated their 28th wedding anniversary. They were 60 and 52 respectively, with gray hair and weathered faces, and a lifetime of memories between them. The ranch had grown from a successful cattle operation into a sprawling enterprise that included horse breeding, sheep, and even some agricultural land where they grew hay and grain. But on their anniversary, they left all of it behind for a day. They saddled horses, just the two of them, and rode out to Olivia's old cabin by the creek. It was still there, now used primarily for storage, but it held so many memories. "This is where it all started," Olivia said as they stood in the clearing where Cade had first brought her supplies, where he had fixed her barn and taught her to ride. "This is where you told me I mattered." "You always mattered," Cade said. "I just made sure you knew it." He took her hand, and they walked down to the creek, to the spot where rustlers had once camped and set in motion the events that had brought them together in a new way. "I have loved every moment of our life together," Cade said. "Even the hard times, the struggles, the losses. Because we faced them together, and that made all the difference." "I love you," Olivia said simply. "I have loved you since the moment you looked at me and really saw me, and I will love you until my last breath." They kissed there by the creek, with the water burbling over the rocks and the Montana sun warm on their shoulders. They were not young anymore, but the love between them was as strong as it had ever been, perhaps stronger for having weathered the storms of life together. As they rode back to the ranch house, where their children and grandchildren waited to celebrate with them, Olivia thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a lonely orphan in Philadelphia to the matriarch of a thriving frontier family. From invisible to essential. From unloved to cherished beyond measure. "Thank you," she said to Cade as they approached the house, where she could see figures gathering on the porch. "For what?" Cade asked. "For everything," Olivia said. "For seeing me, for loving me, for giving me this life, this family, this home. For making me the most important person on this ranch." Cade reached over and squeezed her hand. "You were always important, Olivia. You just needed someone to remind you of that, and I plan to keep reminding you every day for the rest of our lives." They dismounted and walked hand in hand toward the house, toward the family they had built together, toward the future that stretched bright and promising before them. Behind them, the creek continued its eternal song, and the Montana mountains stood watch over the 3Z Ranch, where two people who had once been lost had found each other and built something lasting and true. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, just as it had on that evening so many years ago when Olivia had first arrived in Montana. But this time, she was not alone. She was surrounded by love, anchored by family, secure in the knowledge that she mattered, that she had always mattered, and that she always would. As they stepped onto the porch and were enveloped by the joyful chaos of their family, Olivia looked back one more time at the land that had become her home. The wild Montana landscape had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately transformed her. She had arrived expecting to be ignored, invisible as she had always been. Instead, she had been seen, valued, and loved beyond her wildest dreams, and in the end, that made all the difference.